This is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. Hope you enjoy this Critical Thought, your daily discussion on game design. And be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and you can pitch future Critical Thought topics. Alright everybody, we got a good Critical Thought today. We are talking about the used game debate. One of the big three always hot button issues when it comes to the game industry. The other two will of course be, are video games sexist? And of course console versus PC. Maybe I should touch on those two here when you just condense all the flames and trolls into one giant post here. But used games have been a majorly debated part of the game industry since the growing popularity in the 90s. I talked more about my thoughts in the post mentioned below. But the first part of this, for people who are new or don't understand things from like a business standpoint, is we need to briefly go over the first sale doctrine. And what this essentially is a protection for the consumer. If you are a creator of any kind of product, cars, video games, books, movies, again, you name it, by being the owner of the copyright, you own all the material that's associated with it. Nintendo owned anything related to Mario Brothers, the characters, settings, power-ups, everything along those lines. The first sale doctrine basically states that if you put something out to be sold, again, pick a product, once money or goods or whatever have exchanged hands, then that specific copy of your product is no longer owned by you, but by the person that you did a transaction with. So what this does, it effectively means that if I buy a car from, pick a dealership, they can't come back to me in a week saying, we need that car back, we want to give it to someone else. That copy of the car is now mine to do with however I see fit. That doesn't mean that the parts or the brand I have any control of. If I buy the latest Legend of Zelda game, that doesn't mean I can take those assets, put it in my own game, and do something along those lines. The assets are still associated to the copyright, but that specific copy of the game is mine. If I want to take this and put it on auction and make a lot of money, I could do that. If I want, throw it off my roof and shoot it like skeet shooting, I could do that. I don't know why you would want to do it, but you are free to do that. And Nintendo has no control or any kind of impact on that specific copy. Now, like I said, this is a major part of any and all consumer-based goods. And this has been the major part of the second-hand or used market. In a small scale, we can talk about a local garage sale, or going up to your buddy and saying, give me $30 and I'll give you my game. To the large scale would be, of course, eBay, Amazon, and of course, GameStop. Now, when it comes to the used game market, this is where things get very dicey, because there's basically two sides to this. Or, I'm sorry, there's actually three sides. You have the stores in question, you have the developer and the publisher, and then you have the consumer. And this is one of those topics that, depending upon what your position is right now as you're watching this video, will probably have a good idea of where your opinion lies on the used game debate. But one of the things you have to understand is that developers and publishers hate used games. They've hated it since the 90s. They really hate, of course, renting games with Blockbuster and so on. But it has been pretty much like an assumed fact that most developers and publishers hate dealing with GameStop or Babbage's or EB or whenever you got into the game industry, that version. But the point is, how GameStop has conducted itself with its used game market has been a very polarizing affair. And as we've seen over the last few years, they have been accused and have been caught red-handed doing some very shady stuff when it comes to selling used games. And to understand why, we need to talk about why this is a big deal. So I prepared a little bit of an example for everyone. And before we begin, please keep in mind that any numbers we use are hypotheticals. Like I said in yesterday's Critical Thought, the exact dealings of the developer slash publisher and retail arrangement, that is kept in the boardrooms. Unless you've actually have been a part of those discussions, you probably don't know the exact details. Now, with that said, what we do know is when you go into a store, you give GameStop $60 for the latest game, they give you the game, you walk out. That $60 purchase is then split three ways: to the developer, to the publisher, and then to the retail store, or in this case, GameStop. So let's say hypothetically that I give them $60, I get my game, I walk out. GameStop keeps $20 of that, and then the remaining $40 goes to the developer and the publisher. Now keep in mind that everything we're talking about is on a per copy basis, because that will sort of give you the idea of how much money we're actually talking about. So GameStop right now is sitting at $20 in the black. If they want to earn like the full price of a retail game, $60, they need to effectively sell 3 new games. Again, they're keeping $20 each, 20, 40, 60. So let's say a week, 2 weeks later, I decide I'm done with this game, I don't want it anymore, I either hate it or I've beaten it, there's nothing left. I go back to GameStop and I say, I want to trade this in. Now this is a new copy of a highly anticipated or recently released game, so they're going to give me a little bit extra trade-in value. Let's say they give me $30. So they give me $30 of trade-in, I give them the game, I walk out. So right now on that single copy of the game, GameStop is now $10 in the red. Now you may think that's bad, but here's where things get interesting. They take that new copy of the game, or should I say the used copy of the game, and let's say they're going to price it at $50. Someone new walks into the store, they see the games on the shelves, and 50 is less than 60, and they buy, and they give them $50, and they get the used copy because it's cheaper. Maybe they only have $50 to spend on a game. They walk out. In this case, GameStop now keeps 100% of the profit. So now they've gone from being $10 in the hole to now up $40. And like I just said, all that money from the used game purchase doesn't go anywhere else. It stays completely with GameStop. So let's say another week passes, and that person who bought the used copy says, I'm done with this game too, I'm going to trade it in. Well, this time it's no longer trading in a new copy of a highly anticipated game, it's trading in a used copy of a highly anticipated game. So instead of giving them $30 of trade-in, let's say they give them $15 of trade-in. So what that means now is, again, money, the goods are exchanged, and GameStop is now up $25. Again, 40 minus 15. So we go again, that game gets put back on the shelves, someone buys it, another $50 is given, and now GameStop is up $75. And they can keep doing this per copy, and you can quickly see how the money is adding up, and of course why developers and publishers hate this. And this is the part of the debate where I have to side with the developers and the publishers, because it's not really a second-hand market. It's basically one company holding a monopoly, because every time those copies are traded in, it always goes to GameStop, and they're always getting full price for it. And as we've seen, they have even gone as far as downplaying new copies of games so that you explicitly will buy the used ones. A few years ago, they were caught making the new and used stickers almost virtually identical, except for, little word that says new or a little word that says used, to try and trick you into buying the used copy. Because again, every used copy that gets sold is 100% of the profit to GameStop, 0 to the developers, and if you decide to trade that in, well, that copy goes back on their shelves and they can sell it again and again and again. And like I said, this is the part where I have to side with developers on, especially considering that GameStop is supposed to be a retailer. This is basically the store selling someone's goods and then putting their competing brand or their exact brand at a lower price right next to it. And it just seems very shady to me. And for those of you watching this, what do you think about this part of the debate? Let me know in the comments below. But as we're about to talk about, the developers and the publishers aren't exactly innocent in this issue as well. One of the things that we've seen over the last few years have been all manner of ways to downplay or try and get rid of the used game market. A few years ago, there was what we've talked about with Project $10, which was a little tactic that the publishers pulled to remove content from highly anticipated games and attach it to a one-time DLC code that was bundled with new copies. So if you bought the game used, then a major system would be left out, and your only options were to give the developers an additional $10. Basically, this would guarantee that whether you bought a game new or used, the developer and the publisher would get some money. The example that I had to deal with was from Batman Arkham City, which all the Catwoman content, her moveset, her quests, and all that were locked to DLC. So if someone bought the game used, that whole portion of the game would have been cut unless they gave WB Interactive $10 more. And I think one of the wrestling games did this, and I'm sure there have been a few other ones. Now, after enough complaining, this was eventually rescinded. Now, the big point and why I've been talking about this lately has to do with the fact of streaming and the digital games market. As we've talked about, being able to buy your games digitally has been a very big factor in terms of how games are being sold. We've seen the growing use of the games as a service model in order to keep the value of games growing and going. So that way, if a game keeps giving you content, why would you trade it in? And also, if I've spent $60 worth of DLC on this game, if I trade it in, then I lose those $60 plus, whatever I get for trade-in. So it benefits me to keep this game. And for every game that a consumer keeps, that's one less used copy of the game for GameStop to sell. Now, when it comes to the greater used game market, again, your Amazon, eBay, and consumer to consumer, I am definitely in support of that. I think that there should be a market there for people who are tired of a game and they want to get rid of it. Again, every game has an eventual point where you've seen it all. And if this gives someone the chance to buy another game that they like, as long as money is still exchanging hands, I think I'm fine with that. And the big difference between what would be considered a traditional used game market and what GameStop does is how the copy and the money are exchanged. With a traditional used game, I give you a game, they give me my money, I'm out of the equation. If they want to trade that game to someone else or give it to a friend or whatever, I'm not part of that anymore. That copy is going to go from here to here to here and so on. With the GameStop arrangement, because everything circles back to GameStop, it basically goes, here's my copy, I trade into GameStop, and then GameStop will sell to someone else. I have to do the circle. There you go. This is better. They'll just keep taking this copy and selling it and trading it in and trading it and selling, and they're just keeping all the money. Until, of course, that game no longer becomes popular, but then it can still be, that used copy may be the only way to get it. Or it may have been the only way to get it back before the digital era. As we've talked about, when it comes to digital games, there is no physical quantity of it. The whole major point of the first sale doctrine, excuse me, I just got mucus in my throat, sorry about that. The whole point of the first sale doctrine is, if I manufacture 100,000 copies of a game, a book, film, whatever, then that means there's only 100,000 copies of that good out in the world. And again, from the first sale, I am entitled to 100,000 copies of my product being sold. Once that's done, that's it. Those copies are now in the used market or in the secondhand market, so they can be sold, traded, bartered, etc. Now, one thing that I was thinking about, and I want to get your thoughts on this one. I would be fine if you could trade digital keys of games. Not, key resellers like G2A, etc., but give me the option to, let's say I finished Hotline Miami, for instance, and I want to trade that with my friend for one of his games. I think you should be able to exchange those keys. He gets my game of Hotline, I get his game. Obviously, there would be some restrictions, like you couldn't do this on a game that would still be in the warranty period, for instance, or the refund. But the reasoning that I have is that even though the digital keys aren't a physical quantity, there's still a quantity out there, because the keys just don't magically appear. The Steam server has to generate them, or the developer has to request them, and then these keys should be easily trackable, or should be easily tracked and quantifiable. So even though there can theoretically be infinite copies of these games, we have a good idea of how many keys have been generated, and then we're still dealing with a fixed known. And again, the key is still a one-to-one. Just because I give you my key for your game, I can't give that key to 5 other people. Likewise, they can't take my key and, print up 8 different versions of that to give to their friends. It's still one key to one game, which is the same thing we do with the used game market. Again, with a CD, it's still one CD. Now, obviously, there is the grayer issue of people burning CDs and pirating them like that, but that is a little bit beyond today's post or today's critical thought. But that's where I would like to see things go. Now, for our last part for today's critical thought, as we've talked about, there is a greater push towards streaming and digital games, with the Xbox Game Pass, PlayStation Now, and the like. And what that means, and what my gut is telling me, is that I think we're going to hit that point where GameStop will eventually have a major collapse. I was talking to a friend of mine on Skype the other night. We were trading conspiracy theories about what would be the event that does it. And as I talked about in yesterday's critical thought, the 2 big ones, in my opinion, would be removing the bandwidth cap for downloading games, and if major games were able to succeed without having a retail or physical quantity to deal with. So what do you think about that? Do you think that GameStop is on death's door? Do you think there's anything they can do to fix it? And what do you think about the used game market? Are you for or against it? Like I said, I am definitely for it, because at the end of the day, anything to give the consumer more options and to allow them to be more willing to spend money if they know they can trade in or get something of similar value, I'm definitely for that. As long as we're dealing with fixed quantities of keys or CDs or whatever, I think it should be available. But we're going to end things here. So as always, thank you so much for watching today's Critical Thought. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe, and be sure to pitch if you have a topic for a later Critical Thought. But otherwise, I'm Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com, where we examine the art and science of games. Check back daily for more great content, and I'll see you all next time. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoy it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and of course share with your friends. It always helps out. For daily posts on all manner of game design and industry topics, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the site and everything that I do, be sure to check out the Patreon campaign. If we can hit goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy, and I'll be able to support myself and my household. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at GWBycer for updates throughout the day and random thoughts from me. And lastly, you can find me on Twitch right over there at GWBycer for daily streams most nights around 10 Eastern. Thanks again for watching the video, and be sure to check out more great content coming to the Game Wisdom channel real soon.